There's so many instances early on in your upbringing where, it seemed like your parents kind of encouraged your business ambition, whether it be, when your dad loaned you a dollar for candy, or the, famous story of the Tahoe ski trip and dumpster diving.
Dumpster diving for an address, not for snacks. Okay. Yeah, no. Like I said, my parents were interested in anything that I was interested in, except for motorcycles. I had to buy my three-wheelers on my own. Anytime I wanted something that they weren't going for, I had to save my own money. But I was always very entrepreneurial as a kid. I had a business in everything. I had a business in lawn mowing. I had a business in delivering the free paper. I had business in everything. The candy business, my dad lent me the dollar. Smith & Scalvini was the appliance store in our town. So I went down to Smith & Scalvini and got a refrigerator box that they were throwing away. I drug it down the street. And I was very handy as a kid. I always knew how to work with my hands. So I cut a hole in it, made a flap, put a stick underneath of it to make a little counter, got some of my crayons and stuff and painted Guy's Candy Store, and put it in the little square in the town. It was this tiny little square. It's not more than 40 by 40. And a couple picnic benches there between my parents' two businesses at the time. And I went over to the candy store right across the street, Sweets and Treats, and I bought $1 worth of penny candy. So I had licorice hats, Jolly Ranchers, and I just set them up. I sat inside my little candy store. And people would come by and just think, wow, this is so cute. Look at this little hippie kid. Not that they could tell I was a hippie kid, but they would buy the candy. The candy was a penny. They'd give me a quarter, a nickel, whatever. I think I made like 10, 12 bucks. I went back in, gave my dad $1. I was 8. But I always had a little hustle. I always had a business going. And so that manifested into the pretzel thing. I was in Tahoe skiing with my parents. And that's back in the day when they go, here's $5. It's 8 o'clock. We'll see you at the lodge at 4, okay? And I just go off by myself.
Yep.
My little sister would come with me. So I came back, and my dad said, so how was your day? What'd you do? I said, what'd you eat? I said, pretzel. You had a pretzel for lunch? I said, yeah. And he goes, where's the rest of my money? I said, well, I had a lot of pretzels. He's like, you ate 10 pretzels? I said, yeah. He says, if you like pretzels so much, he goes, you should start a pretzel business. I said, I'm in 4th grade. How am I gonna start a pretzel business? And he's like, go down and ask the guy where the pretzels come from. So I went down and I said, hey, where the pretzels come from? This guy's been my buddy for the last 3 days, okay? He says, why do you want to know? I said, my dad told me that. He goes, why, so you can get pretzels and start a business and put me out of business? I'm like, no, dude, I'm in 4th grade. He's like, I'm not telling you. So I go back defeated to my dad. And this was like life lesson number, 1 million from my dad. He's like, bullshit. No. We're not taking no for an answer. You're going to go down there, you stake him out. When he throws the box away, get it and bring it to me. So I hang out, watching the guy, throws it in the dumpster. I jump in the dumpster, get it. I'm not that big. Couldn't get it out by myself. So I come back. My dad, he's like, tears off the address, throw that box away. So then for the next year, every day after school, I would go to Tom Ford, which was this cabinet maker in our town. And I'd tell my dad, okay, today I want to go work on the pretzel cart. And we put it on the back of a 3-wheel bike. And I'd ride the bike, had a little propane stove in there. It'd make steam, and then the pretzels would steam, dip them in salt, put mustard on them. So 5th grade, I'm ready to go, so ready to start business. Walks me down to the bank. Henry Weller's the bank president, says, guy needs to open an account. He wants to get a loan. Henry says, how much do you need a loan for? And I said, for $100. Said, okay, fill out the paperwork. So I filled out my first bank loan for $100. He gives me a checkbook. I had a checkbook in my back pocket in 5th grade. And that was it.
In what ways did kids make fun of you for
Awesome
Awesome
It was called
Pretzel
the Awesome
Shop?
Pretzel.
Yeah.
Monopoly is getting ready to come out with the Flavortown Monopoly.
Oh, that's cool.
And in Flavortown Monopoly is the Awesome Pretzel. So there's all these little homages around the Flavortown Monopoly board, and one of them is the Awesome Pretzel. Nobody was doing what I was doing. It just was not a normal thing. Nobody had the entrepreneurial, I was lemonade stands. I was always doing something. And nobody had ever had a soft pretzel. A soft pretzel was unheard of. What is this thing? It's not a donut. You do what? You put salt on it and then mustard? People looked at me like I was crazy. But I was making bank. And I had all my friends working for me. And so that's used to what pissed my dad off more than anything. My dad would come down to the fair to bring me pretzels from the meat market, which I now own the meat market where we stored the pretzels.
Oh,
I bought
cool.
the meat market so it didn't go out of business. Anyhow, long story short. But anyhow, my dad would come down there. Where's Guy? Well, I was out hustling pretzels with the carnies for ride tickets, because then I would parlay my ride tickets with the souvenir guy. Had a little business always going. Everybody wanted something from somebody else. They just didn't sometimes know how to do it. But I was always a good middleman. And oh man, when he used to catch me not at my pretzel booth, he would come. I remember being on the zipper, the ride, and I'm there with my buddy. And we're going for like the 15th time. And he's standing at the bottom and he's going, damn it, get off that money. Get your ass. And he's got me by the back of the shirt, dragging me out. I better not see you off your cart for the rest of the day,
So your parents host a dinner for a cork seller, right? Or host a dinner
Glad
with
you
a
got
cork
that
seller.
right, because Saturday Night Live did a great thing on corks.
And that leads to what for you?
Okay, so we had exchange students when I was a kid. We had one from Norway named Marianne Leon, and one from Sweden named Lars Moritzen.
Which had to be the coolest thing ever. Exposed you
I
to
didn't
so
have
much.
a big brother or big sister.
Yeah.
And my parents were always, I was very worldly as a kid. I think my parents talked to me, not at me. We were super inclusive family. I think the reason that I didn't, I've always been real high energy and real, 6 million miles an hour about things. That, my parents, there was no time in high school to go drink at lunch or party or, do that, because it was 6 o'clock. We were at the dinner table.
Changed a little bit in college.
And it was, well, who knows about that? But it was really hardcore, but not hardcore inquisition. It was just like, what was your day like, or how'd this go, or whatever. Just super, just such great family communication and values. And I want to be an exchange student. I'm like 10, 12. And I've got this in my mind, I'm gonna be an exchange student. Well, the thing is, I don't speak any languages. I'm not even that good at English, as we can tell. So Pierre Lachaud is his name, and he's a cork salesman from Paris. And he happens to meet my mom's great aunt at Mass in DC. One way or another, he says, I'm going to Northern California. She says, my great niece lives in Northern California, you should look her up, because he was gonna be here during Thanksgiving. He's in Napa. We live in Humboldt County, and we're 5 hours away. So he comes up there, and he's the neatest guy in the world, and I'm sitting next to him at dinner. I'm like, you live in France? He's like, yeah. I'm like, I want to go to France. And he's like, that's very nice. And I'm hustling this guy. He's there for like 3 days. He goes, I have a friend that fought with the Americans in the war. He's the principal of a high school. I could ask him, and maybe you could go to school there. That's all you had to say. I'm vacuum salesman, man. I got my foot in the door. I'm not going anywhere. So I write him, back then you had to use the envelope that was the paper. Mm-hmm. You'd write the par avion or whatever, and you'd write the letter and you'd make it into the envelope, and I'd mail it to him. And Pierre would write me back. So I finally got it worked out that I could go to the high school. Monsieur Peltier was the name of the principal. Okay, now all I got to work on is speaking French and getting the money. Okay, like that's my plan. It's got one step out of 3. So I've been saving all my money from my pretzel booth to buy my Corvette, because I'm getting a Camaro or a Corvette or a Chevelle. I'm getting something. And I got maybe $5,000 saved up. I'm in 8th grade.
It's not bad.
1982?
Right.
$5,000, which I tried to spend 1 million times. And my dad would always hold my foot to the fire, like, you really don't need another BMX bike. So the deal is I have to have the money, which, how am I really gonna get $10,000? Pretzel business goes into full speed. And I have to have, there's a town, Eureka is the town closest to Ferndale, the big town. They won't let me sell pretzels at the fair. So I turned it into Awesome Nachos. So now I got a nacho business. Whatever I could to make a buck. So I'm doing the nacho business. And so now I'm raising my money. So while I'm raising my money, now I got to get this language thing figured out. Well, my high school only has Spanish. Juniors and seniors can take Spanish. Well, Spanish isn't going to work. My dad, we find out that at the junior college, they have a conversational French. So I moved my high school schedule around so I have a 2-hour gap, and the school lets me go, and I go to the junior college. It's about 30 minutes away from our house. And my mom drives me because I'm not old enough. So since my mom's driving me, she's like, well, I'll take French too. So there I am, 15, taking French with my mommy, who's this gregarious redhead. My mom is a piece of work. People think I got this big personality. My mom makes me, I'm a cricket in the room compared to her. She's such a great energy.
I've been told she's the kind of jokester.
Oh, funny. I do a lot of things that I love to do. Making my mom laugh is my favorite job. Mm-hmm. So my mom takes a class with me. Well, the teacher, all he does is talk about the Champs-Élysées and Sacre Bleu and drinking wine in class and his beret, and he's a real Francophile. I have no business being in this class. So I'm learning the structure of French. I don't learn anything in French. He doesn't teach us anything. So Christmas break goes by, and then I have my birthday, so I'm old enough I can drive myself now. So I'm driving myself to school. So I'd taken the college classes, have to pass with a B or better. I passed with a B or better. My dad says, okay, say something to me in French. So I think I say, one of the 10 coined phrases that we would practice, whatever. He's like, okay, we can go. So I write Pierre. He says, Monsieur. So I write Monsieur Pelletier. Monsieur Pelletier says, there's a family that has a house that you can stay at, and they'll give you a room, and you have to pay, $500 a month. So I get on the plane. My parents put me on the plane.
And you're how old then?
16.
And that trip
was the longest flight of my life.
And it influenced you how, you think?
The trip or the flight? The flight was, how do I get off this? I cried. I was like, what have I gotten myself? Because I was always doing big things, like always thinking big. But I'm like, I really have done it this time, Mike. I've really gone over. I'm way outside of my boundaries. And I land, and it's raining in Paris, and there's Pierre picking me up. Drives me in the car. I get to the town that I live in, Chantilly. And I go stay in this house. The house is cold. The madame, her name is Madame Drie, the lady that owned, the family that owns the house, very cold. I have to live on the 4th floor in a closet. No bathroom. Bunch of armoires in the room. Can't open any of them. Little desk and a single bed. And I just sit there and I go, what have I done? What have I done? And then came the most humiliating thing. I realized I don't have toothpaste. Well, I didn't have a dictionary. All I had was the thing I bought at the airport, all the phrases for a tourist. Where's the bus? And in the back, there was like 500 words, French words. So all I could find was tooth and soap. So I went to the pharmacy and I asked for tooth soap. And the lady just burst out laughing. She called another person over, said, I asked for tooth soap again. And then I asked for soap tooth. She started laughing. Then everybody came from the back, and they started laughing. And there's 10 people at this counter busting up, and I am dying. So I went, I knew the term comme tu dis, how do you say that? And I asked them to write it down for me. And I took it back, and I went home, back to my room, and I took a piece of paper, and I wrote toothpaste, and then I wrote the translation in French, and I taped it to the wall. And every day I would learn words, and I would go back and I'd write them, and I'd tape them to the wall. So I was always looking at the words, and that's how I built my vocabulary. And if it was a verb, I would conjugate the verb, and I'd tape that to the wall. And I had hundreds of them, and that's how I learned. But the funny thing is the dialect in French is so vast, it's even more than the United States. So think about saying to somebody, how are you doing from Texas? What do you need from somebody in New York? To where are you going from someone in California? I was this redneck surfer New Yorker from Maine that had a bad draw from Louisiana. I was just all over the board. People look at me when I would talk, and they're like, what happened?
Your stay there impacted you how, you think?
Oh, everything. Didn't change who I was. It just unleashed the Kraken. It turned me into, there was no stopping me. After I had been through that, and I went through some scary shit. I hated the family, the boarding house I lived in. I left, didn't tell anybody.
Really?
and went and lived with another family. Oh,
What?
you don't have that in your notes,
I
huh? Got him on something. No, these kids approached me in school one day, and they said, these 3 Norwegian kids, huge, tall, blonde. They were the only ones in the school that were tall, blonde. They said, do you live at the Dries house? I said, I do. They said, does the washing machine eat your clothes? And I said, it does. Big old hole in my shirt. And the food sucks, huh? And I'm like, yeah, that's why I eat at the school now. And like, we knew the kid that lived there last year. And they had heard of this kid. His name was Roman. And he was a kid from New York. So they said, come to our house for dinner. So I go to their house for dinner. The nicest family. So that's it. I go back to the Dries house, pack up my shit, and I bounce. Well, there's no calling home. I couldn't call home. The Dries had a lock on the phone. It was a physical lock on the phone. It was a rotary phone. And this family was very strange. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how strange this family was. So they flip out, because I left a note, I'm not coming back. They're not getting their $500 a month. They call Pierre. Pierre flips out. He calls my parents. My parents, and they find me, and my dad is going to kill me. Because you can't yell over a land phone back then because it skips so many things. So it's, and I'm like, and he's like, you're coming home. I'm coming to get you. You're coming home. And I'm like, I'm not coming home. This family I'm living with is really cool. You know, you're coming home. So I'm trying to explain it to them. Finally, they get on the phone, and they speak great English. And they're like, your dad is very upset with you. And I said, I can understand. I guess I can understand why. And finally, it worked out, and I didn't have to go home.
Why did you end up dropping out of Ferndale High?
So, you know, the family that I lived with was pretty open-minded to stuff. I also had a pretty good ability to explain that I was going with other places with other exchange students, because there were 3 other exchange students in our town, but they all came through the correct process of going through the Rotary program. And they all spoke great French, which ironically enough, we're all friends again. We lost contact with each other, and we all reunited about 4 years ago. And so I would say I'm going to their house. I just bounce and go to Paris. I was very independent as a kid anyway. So, I mean, I went to England, I did all kinds. I mean, I'd go say I'm going to Pierre's house. I would go to Pierre's house, and then I'd stay at Pierre's house for 2 days, say I was going home, then I'd take 2 days off, and then I'd go to Brussels. You know, I just go wherever I wanted. So when I came back,
Felt small?
I didn't feel like I wanted to go to school. Plus, I hadn't really gone to school. I'd gone to school. I went to school every day. I'd go to school 6 days a week. But I spent so much time in school. I read French at a 3rd grade level. I wrote at a 1st grade level. You know, so I wasn't really able to do a lot in school. I tried. I mean, I really paid attention. But I came back, and I was sitting with my dad at the dinner table the day I was supposed to start my senior year. And he's like, what are you thinking? And I'm like, I don't know. I said, I just don't. And he goes, well, you got to do something. He says, if you're not going back to school, you're going to go get a job, and you got to go start the junior college. I'm like, okay. So everybody's driving to school, senior day, and seniors all get to park in the front. I'm driving my dad's old work truck. Everybody peels off, and I just go to Eureka. And then we get a call that afternoon, like, guy didn't make it to school today. I said, yeah, guy's not coming back to school. And I said, well, he said he's not 18. He has to come back. And he says, well, we're not making him come back. So I went to the junior college, and I was already signed up through the French classes. So I didn't need my parents there. So I signed up for classes. So I was going to the junior college, and I got a job as a busboy in a fine dining restaurant. And all my friends come over and go, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just not going back. And it was a big thing. Like, went to France, only has 2 years of education now he's dropping out of high school. He's like, blah, 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 blah. So it was kind of a little bit of scuttlebutt for a while.